Hello, everyone. I hope you hear me well. Welcome to this short talk about anti fraud and anti scam protection in accounting. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Christoph Klopfer. I'm one of the product owner in charge of the accounting application for about 3 years now. But believe me, it hasn't taken that long to be faced with one of the problems that I'm going to talk to you about. Before I go further, there will be a Q&A like all the other talks at the end. So the QR code is there. I'm going to show it back at the end of the presentation. Um, but let me dive straight in. So this is not going to be like an ex cathedra course about what is invoice fraud. It is a big subject. A lot of things can happen, but let me just point to you to how big and how important that subject is for any accountant in the world right now. So, what are the type of frauds and scams that we already can see? One example, one possibility, and that is used quite a lot by scammers and frauders, is a creation of a shell company, which are fake or very small companies that have almost no assets. And those companies that are sometimes even registered are used to produce invoices and to suggest payments, usually for services and goods that are in fact never delivered. Shell companies are very big problems, and quite recently, I think everybody has heard about the Panama Papers, and Panama Papers is in fact a scheme that was created based on shell companies and fake companies like that. Um, Fake invoices, I would say it's a small difference. I'm talking about real companies. Usually, what the scammers use are, very well-known companies. It could be like local internet connection providers or, local energy suppliers that everybody knows, and their invoice styles is known by everybody. And the scammer would actually create a fake one that looks really like a normal invoice from those providers. Of course, this is even easier to trust because it really looks like something the accountant is used to receive or to deal. Um, and it really needs to pay attention to what's going on to make the difference between the two. I'm talking here about external scammers, but you will see or you have heard that a lot of the time scamming can also come from inside the company. And so an employee that would just have access to the accounting software has an easy way of just duplicate an invoice and change a one or two very small details and just change where the invoice needs to be paid to really cash out the amount. And recent examples, I put you one name here. It's a very interesting story how someone was able to invoice for over $100 million to companies and cash all that money before those big companies, which were, big online companies like Google and Facebook, actually discovered the problem. There are other examples. Um, Invoice tampering is something that is getting really popular now that people use their emails or softwares that are available online to produce and send those invoices. It is possible for hackers to hijack those email addresses or those softwares and use that actually source of truth to produce illegitimate invoices. So that is also something that is getting more and more popular. And believe me when I say that our Odoo accounting office actually receive multiples of those examples every year. And a recent study has shown that like 30% of UK companies are in 1 year will be victim of an invoice fraud that is coming from one of those sources. And the really terrifying number here is that on those companies, only about 40% of those ones were actually able to detect the fraud before executing the payment. More examples where you can even be more creative, which are pay schemes. An example of that would be a company receive an invoice, regular invoices, but then someone from inside the company would trigger a payment for an abnormal amount, so more than what is actually due, then pretend that that amount was not, or it was a mistake, but we'll ask for reimbursement on another account and we'll cash the difference. So this is also sometimes that you can see. So basically you see that there are there will always be a lot of creativity by the frauders to scam people and just use and abuse the fact that the accountants have to deal with tons of invoices in a world that is going more electronic and going faster and faster, which is all great. But when you don't even take time to look at your invoices because they are handled automatically, well, it is time that those softwares and providers actually help you detect those frauds. So how can Odoo help? And for once, we can put a bit of AI magic into that because, as you will see, we use some data and we use some analysis to help the accountant avoid those scams. Um, a small note with how we can help, I think, is almost by design of Odoo. We dream about a software where everybody in a company would actually work in the same software with integrated data that flow from an application to another. Well, by design, what that will create is a situation where as soon as someone from the financial operations create data into the software, it will be visible to others. It is very easy for, well, in a company where the accountant is working alone on an accounting software that nobody ever sees or touches, but the only thing that he shows out of that are, pre-made reports. It's very easy for him uh, to hide stuff that he doesn't want to other people to see. Well, in Odoo, that is a bit harder to do. If you register an invoice, but your business responsible has access to whatever the examples are shown on the screens, whether it's a spreadsheet or an invoice analysis report, or even has access to some of the easy to understand accounting reports like the H payable and receivable. Well, as soon as that invoice is created, it appears on the reports. It's impossible to hide. But that is certainly not enough. So, what are we doing to help the accountant deal with those weird invoices? I would say two main things. The first is obviously a bill duplicate detection. When you import a bill into Odoo, we will see if there are references, amounts, dates that corresponds to something that is already present in the database, and we will trigger warning to the user. So very often it's only used because someone, it's an honest mistake. I received the same invoice via two channels, and okay, it's now twice in my database, so it's already useful. But in some cases, when people like duplicate the fake invoices, this is already a trigger warning. Another one that we've added in 17.1, so for the people only using main versions, it will be available in 18, is abnormal invoice detection. So there we add a bit more intelligence when you import an invoice for a vendor or a customer with which you have a long history of invoicing. We will analyze your history with him to see if the new invoice that is imported kind of matches the history that you have with him. Best example would be like an internet connection provider. You probably almost receive the invoice at the same dates or for the same periods for the same amounts, more or less. Well, if suddenly something is completely out of the ordinary, well, it's a good idea to maybe raise the awareness that something happens here. So I will get out of my presentation to just show you here an example for those two cases. I'm going to import a nice fishy PDF that I've crafted myself. You see that here I have a history of invoicing with one of my vendor, a Belgian company. He invoiced me around the first open day of the month, so it's usually the same dates, usually the same kind of an amount, but you see that it doesn't need to be perfect. And now I will suddenly like import, oops, that's not the good window, import this one, and it will trigger warnings everywhere. So first of all, you see that on the first line, the guy actually, well, me, I actually created an invoice with a reference that is actually already in my database for that vendor. So this is already a bit fishy. But more important than that, my AI has seen that like the amount that I have in that invoice doesn't match at all what's normal for that vendor. And again, that invoice was put at a date that also is kind of abnormal. This is not only shown here. It will be very easy for an accountant when he opens the list view of his invoices to see that those abnormal numbers are shown also in yellow in the view list. Um, as those trigger warnings are kind of like really red flags, it will continue to pop up even if the accountant tries to validate that invoice. We are telling the accountant, are you really sure that this is normal or not? Of course, there might be cases where those warnings should be ignored. So you can definitely tell that for that vendor is a bit particular, so you want to ignore the warnings. But we really want to bring the attention of the users that this invoice doesn't look right. So those are examples um, for invoices. Now, if we go further, on those invoices, you want to pay them. So you will always get information about how to pay that invoice. Um, we have to realize that more and more, like especially for B2B businesses, we pay via bank transfers. So you need those bank account numbers. We've introduced, like some versions ago now, the bank validation helper. This also tries to help the accountant, saying normally you should validate a bank account for a partner on which you want to pay to. This is something that should be done by people that know what they're doing and trusting those accounts. This is a specific user right that you need to grant to the user before he can actually validate himself bank accounts in the database for outgoing payments. And you see that we even show some warnings on that stage. I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute. Um, but on top of that, when those payments that are prepared on those untrusted bank accounts are created, we will still continue to try to protect the user, to include those payments by mistakes into like batch payments and things like that, to really make sure that all the necessary steps and points of attention have been taken before you validate such a payment. So again, let's dive into the database. Um, First of all, you've seen here that for my company, I actually already have like a trusted bank account, which is normally the usual one that I'm using. But you've seen that like I have here crafted a new one and I say, oh, you really need to pay on that bank account suddenly. Well, if I do that and I try to input it here and I create it, by default, the new bank account will be untrusted. Me, myself, I don't even have the right to validate that bank account. So this will be delegated to a trusted user in the company to validate it or not. Uh, what happens if some fishy bank accounts are included? So I could take, for example, suddenly for my Belgian vendor, um, is given to me a Swedish bank account. Well, that will trigger a first warning saying, maybe that's right, but there's something fishy about having a Swedish bank account for a Belgian company. So that's what we classify as a medium risk. And you should probably take some time to make sure that it is all right. And this, you even have a link to our documentation why that's a weird idea. I even did worse. I created or crafted here a very fishy bank account, and that bank account that I've created, or that maybe I sent that in the email saying, that invoice is very late, you really need to pay on that specific bank account because you're very late. Those are kind of the stressful situations for accountants. Well, here, that specific weird bank account, what's going on here? This is like a money transfer service, and I'm sending the bank account is basically usually what is going to be used by scammers, things like Western Union. Here it's Wise, so money laundry, well, platforms that can be used to transfer accounts and very often are used by scammers to get, um, um, amounts in a kind of anonymous way. Well, here Odoo highlights you that this account is very fishy and you should probably never pay a vendor on such an account. All right. But let's say I'm not really paying attention. I'm going to take another one. Yeah, I'm going to pay and prepare a payment on one payment method that I've done on that untrusted bank account. Yes, I can create it, but as soon as I will want to prepare a batch pay, oh, already have one, perfect. When I'm going to want to prepare a batch payment, including all my payments, well, here I won't even have like those the other payment that I've prepared. So this won't even be shown here. That's the other one that I've prepared before. So in all steps of the way, I'm going to present you that. Uh, well, my timing is almost as good as the guys next to me. Um, so that's about it. And now we can go for a quick question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you. There's actually one question that just popped up.
Perfect.
We invoice a client with 2 invoices, total amount 8K euro. The client received an invoice with a wrong bank account and paid to the wrong account. Who is responsible? Send items from all sides are all hooked. Who is responsible and where? How can we receive our
Okay,
money?
if you have input a wrong bank account on the invoice that you yourself have sent to the client,
It's your fault.
you're probably wrong, so that you should avoid to do that. But like this is normally a setup that you do in Odoo. You do it once. You create the bank account of your company. You do it once, and then it's automatically populated on all the invoices you produce. So if you're using the invoicing Odoo to do something wrong there, like that would be a pretty big mistake. It's really the basic step of configuration of your company. So use Odoo invoicing and it won't happen.
He's a good seller. How is the AI analyzing invoices? The whole document is sent from analysis. I'm not sure to understand this
Yes.
question.
So basically, that's probably related to, I would say, do we still see my screen? Oops. This part. So yes, this part, what we do is we analyze the history of invoices that we have for your clients. So of course, this will not trigger the first time that you receive an invoice for a new client. We can't analyze anything. It's the first one. It usually will start to trigger when you have like 5 to 10 invoices for the same client. From there, we have like a good analysis, statistical measure of what's typically the period of invoicing that you have from that vendor and an amount. In my demonstration, you could even see the numbers. We use standard deviation analysis and things like that. And then, yes, we will take between the 10 and 30 last invoices of that vendor, do some averages for periods, for times, and then
Then we
when we
trigger.
see something fishy, we trigger the warning.
All right. Well, no, we were victims in a man-in-the-middle attack. The PDF was changed. I'm not sure to understand it. Well,
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I think almost any accounting company that is big enough will get one scam invoice every year. So I'm not surprised that something like that happened. And I think one of the most easy scams that people receive is from a small company and they send invoices with their email. You crack or you hack into their in their emails, and then from there you can find the history of email that is sent with invoices, take one, modify one, and resend an email with the hacked email. This is where those type of detections come into place, where suddenly, even if everything looks normal, the look is okay.
It's the
Well, you
same,
know, it's
let's
the
say,
same vendor, the same email, it's all created automatically. But then suddenly, like a bank account has changed, you've seen that the bank account was
yeah,
untrusted, so I could not even pay it. If they're suddenly like not respecting the normal invoicing period, you get a warning. So all that stuff we try to help the users as much as possible. So Odoo will try
pretty
to
clear.
help. That's
Yeah.
exactly my point.
We have another one.
Sure.
If you want to take a
Sure.
breath. Wise is also used by innovative SMEs, Odoo's core target group, with proper bank accounts behind the Wise account. Instead of classifying at high risk, is bank sync with Wise possible?
If you do that, it's perfectly fine. You can connect to, you can create a journal, you know, use your Odoo synchronization to get all that transaction. That's perfectly fine. What we mean is that whenever you receive like a vendor bill that asks you to pay on the Wise account, this is immediately something that
A
should be
warning.
treated carefully. I'm not saying there might not be one or two cases when it's used, but it's still weird. High risk doesn't mean that you should not do it. That's why people, you know, jump off planes or things like that. I've done it myself. So do it, but be mindful. The whole idea of this is to raise awareness to the accountant that maybe this time he should take a moment, make sure that everything's right, and then he can proceed.
Indeed, always the human needed.
Yes.
Um, let's see. No, is the AI analyzing all the invoices automatically, or is it a feature to turn on off?
No, it's automatic. It would be really dumb to hide those like warnings behind things that people need to activate. We want to protect the accountants all the time. So there's no button to press, there's no setting, there's nothing. We will do it all the time. It isn't even that costly or impactful for the database because all we do is when we display the data, we take the user, we take the last 10 invoices, quick analytic scan. It's done in microseconds. So
Yeah.
no performance impact.
All right. Another one. I'm guessing PayPal will eliminate invoice frauds quite a bit. The next step might be then um, be purchase sales order frauds. Are these? Sorry, I cannot
Yes,
see.
it's annoying.
It's annoying, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say PayPal will eliminate some frauds, but they might not be able to eliminate all the frauds. As I've said, one of the big ways people are, scamming people is hacking to their systems. Well, if I can hack to the system that is sending invoice through the PayPal network, I will still be able to send a fake invoice from your account to to the target company. So of course it's a bit more difficult than just hacking into an email database, but it could still happen. So while it's a bit harder to impersonate someone else in PayPal because you have to declare yourself, there are verification procedures, I could still hack into the system that is used by the regular person. So be careful. Even PayPal is not the answer to all the problems.
And the following is that they are asking if we could use SO or PO into this
Yeah.
anti-fraud system in the future.
For now, we have not yet developed that, but I'm sure that once the invoicing guys are going to send and receive electronic invoices via PayPal all the time, they will realize how good it is, and very quickly sending SO and PO via PayPal is going to get more popular. I think it's still going to take a bit more time for that. Um, PayPal is enforced by governments to say go electronic, and they use that a lot for SO and PO. They don't really have that power, so it's really a matter of waiting for companies to adopt the system and also do that. But why not? Why not? It may happen.
I think we have one last question. If in the future, warning, but it's have been deactivated, I guess. Can you reactivate it again?
You do not deactivate that. Honestly, I think it would be like one of the worst possible things to do. Now, if here you have ignored the future alerts on the partner, you can go on the partner on the customer, and then just change it back. So that's very easy to do. You go here, and in accounting, you can reactivate the abnormal warning if you have deactivated it for a specific partner. So yes, if that was the question, yes, you can do by partner.
I guess so.
Chris?
I think that's it for today. Thanks a lot
Yeah,
for
you're
your
welcome.
talk.
Thank you for your attention.
Bye.
See you.